This week, is the big, beautiful bill in trouble in Washington, D.C. as it tries to leave the House of Representatives? The panel breaks it down. And my exclusive conversation in Jefferson City with the 58th governor of Missouri, Mike Kehoe. We talk school choice, we talk about his faith, and we talk about that all-important border fight with Kansas over who gets the Kansas City Royals and the Kansas City Chiefs. These stories and much more straight ahead on this week's edition of The Lion Week in Review. Welcome into this week's edition of The Lion Week in Review. It's a weekly look at the culture, the courts, your state capital, and your kids. I'm Chris Stigall. Now, let's meet our panel. The men and women behind the scenes here at ReadLion.com. Josh Mann, managing editor. Michael Ryan's our executive editor. And Valerie Cabana, our media contributor here at The Lion. Guys, we've got a lot to get to today. Let's talk about the big, beautiful bill in Washington, D.C. So much hinges on this. There's a lot in it. Everything from tax cuts to Social Security cuts to overtime and tip cuts and something we all watch here closely at the Herzog Foundation. Is there going to be money in there for school choice? Michael, we'll start with you. Some breaking news as we record this today.
Yeah, the House Budget Committee, obviously run by Republicans, failed to advance the bill to the House on a 16 to 21 vote. So now they need to go back to the drawing board on what to do. Yeah, I've been tracking people on X. You know how animals can tell when an earthquake is coming? That's kind of like being on X. You can feel the tremors before they really arrive. And what I've been seeing on X is that conservatives have the pitchforks and torches out already for the Republicans. And that was in advance of this committee failure to pass this bill today. Just some of the posts on X that I've seen. If Republicans don't grow a spine, we will lose the House next year. Americans voted for cuts. President Trump has signed just 5 bills into law, fewer than any president in the first 100 days since at least the 1950s, per MSNBC. Another post, Republicans in the House and Senate are straight up worthless. They don't give a damn about us. And one last one, MAGAs are already setting our sights on rhinos in Congress. They will be Liz Cheney out of D.C. at the earliest opportunity. I love that Liz Cheney is now an action verb.
It's so interesting, though, because I don't know, President Trump has signaled, at least on Truth Social, get this thing passed, Josh, but I understand what Michael says, and I hear it too. Conservatives want more aggressive cuts. A lot of conservatives say we're not doing near enough to slash budgets. So what do we do here? Where are we left to think? Does Trump want this thing to just get done to get it done? It's key to his economy.
Well, I think so. And one thing to keep in mind is that whatever comes out of the House, assuming that a committee can get this through to the House floor vote and they approve it, it's going to go to the Senate and it's going to get all marked up and changed. And probably at that point, there's going to be less room, wiggle room. And so some of this is politics. Some of it I don't think is surprising. And as far as Trump's concerned, he's got to keep pushing for it because he needs something. And he I think, he's a businessman. He'll probably be satisfied if he gets most of what he wants. So he'll keep pressuring. I think the committee's going to come through with something. I know the House Speaker. I don't envy the House Speaker's job. I'll just say that.
And, Michael, do you think ultimately the Republicans are going to get something done? Because I do know the pitchforks are out. You're right about that. Most conventional wisdom is Republicans aren't going to hold on to the House regardless. But I've always thought if they had a story to tell next year, they may well could because Democrats are in such trouble.
Well, I think a lot of people think that unless they pass these tax cuts, the Republicans may be in trouble next year. I talked to both Missouri Senators Eric Schmitt and Josh Hawley this week. Different takes on what's going on. Eric Schmitt says, look, we're working hard, more days in the Senate than since the 1980s. And the big, beautiful bill will solve a lot of these problems, a lot of the angst. Hawley, though, is with the conservatives that are livid. And he notes that only 5 bills has been signed into law and that the big, beautiful bill should have been done months ago.
Meanwhile, how about the Department of Education? Josh, you and I have had some conversations about this already. Tucked in this, supposedly, is going to be great advances in maybe some benefits to those who want school choice, among others. And then I just encapsulate, too, in this conversation, the discussion with Linda McMahon and the Department of Education.
That's right. So Wednesday, the Cato Institute hosted Linda McMahon, the education secretary, for an event. And the Lion actually had an opportunity to be there and ask her a question about dismantling the department she runs, which is really fascinating. But one of the points she made in response to that question is that for every dollar that goes into the classroom, only 47 cents or actually a total of 47 cents, almost half of every dollar is spent on regulatory compliance. That's why she is intent on helping Trump keep his promise to cut the bureaucracy out of the Federal Department of Education, to send what money is needed to the states, and to start to really give education back to the states. And so McMahon seems just as intent on dismantling the department she runs, streamlining it, and so I think it's exactly what Trump promised.
Valerie, there is a story at readline.com on teacher salaries. Teacher pay is always something that comes up. I think most everyone, including Secretary McMahon, have said they want teachers paid well. It sounds like they're hitting what they need to hit in terms of median income, according to this story.
It sounds like they are, but they're still unsatisfied. But the numbers show us that administration in schools has increased by 95% since 2000. And we're talking people who have $100,000 plus salaries. And we haven't seen a benefit to the students, to the learning, to the actual education system. So what this article talks about and what I would suggest is actually cutting some of those administrative costs so that we can pour into those teachers who are pouring into students. That's really important. The average pay, like the $62,000 that we talked about in the article, that's good. I can acknowledge that that's not in every state, but we need to pour into our teachers because those are the people who are really investing in the lives of students nationwide and the future of our country.
Michael, on teacher pay, generally speaking, at the state level, we're going to hear from Governor Kehoe in just a little bit on today's show, but I got into this with him a little bit. Are teachers compensated appropriately in your view, public school teachers, or no?
Well, yeah, the old saw is that you need to pay teachers more, and I think you do. However, we had a story on the Lion that indicated that teacher pay is right in line with the national average for workers, and that you could get more teachers into the classrooms if you just cut administrative positions and costs, as Valerie was kind of talking about. We also found out in that story that the head of the teachers union makes almost $500,000.
Ooh. Valerie, also, there's another story, it seems, every single week. There's some story of some biological male dominating in a women's sporting event.
Yep, this is parents outraged, as they should be. I mean, imagine being a young girl training your whole life, being the best in your sport, and then just to get robbed by a man when he competes against you. It's not fair. We have to protect women's sports. I don't know why girls are still willing to compete at this point. They need to boycott, because then if the man wants to race by himself, he can do that. But we have to really realize that XY chromosomes, even if you look like a female, even if you talk like a female, it doesn't matter. Chromosomes are chromosomes. They come with biological advantages. I don't care if you transitioned at 9 years old, you will still have biological advantages. And so states like California, states like Maine, they are really still diving into this, even though, Governor Gavin Newsom said on his podcast with Charlie Kirk, he doesn't fully support it, but it's still a marginalized group, so I'm not going to ban it. And then Maine's governor has been so adamant about, no, we're not going to listen to Donald Trump and his executive order, but we have to keep men out of women's sports. I think that we're headed in the right direction, but this is absurd.
Yeah, Josh, I don't know that Democrats want this fight again when we're talking about midterms and Republicans may be in trouble. The only thing that might save Republicans from themselves are Democrats continuing to insist to support this kind of thing.
That's right. And we're starting to see some Democrats move on this issue, or at least be silent about it, but not all. And it is baffling. Politically, it's a losing issue for them. 75% to 80% of Americans agree that males should not be competing against females. And so, like Valerie said, when you've got the governor of California sort of making public or changing his stance, however he frames it, on this issue, I think it's something to take note of.
Panel, thank you very much. When we return, we're going to hop on the road and head to Jefferson City. That's the capital of the Show Me State, where Governor Kehoe, the 58th governor of Missouri, sits down, talks with us about his first term, at least his first session with the legislature, now wrapped up, where they're headed, where they've been, where he hopes to go. It's an interesting profile of the man, And we will get into that as the Lion Week in Review rolls on next. Welcome back to the Lion Week in Review. If you missed any of the show, or you're interested in more of this great news that you're hearing and information as we're displaying today, be sure to regularly check out the Lion online at readlion.com. Had a great conversation with the 58th Governor of Missouri, Mike Kehoe, this week in Jefferson City. He wrapped up his first legislative session as Governor of Missouri. We talked about a whole lot of things, including his personal faith. Take a listen.
Faith is who our family is. I mean, you don't get to these offices, no matter which level of government you get into, without a strong faith background, whatever that faith background may be. You really is divine to be able to meet people, get elected, and then actually have some sort of compass as you govern. Because there's very few decisions that you make in this office that everybody agrees with. There's a total of none. So making sure that you have something that you can really believe on in faith. And my mom's favorite thing to tell us all the time in prayer was always about, would never pray for what you want, pray for the right thing to happen. And so I said that prayer many times this week. So
I bet you did.
Yeah.
In fact, while we talk about the Pope, happens to be an American Pope from Chicago. Do you imagine that you'd ever get an audience with this Pope? Now that you're governor, you can maybe swing some connections a little bit. Huh?
Somehow I got to make that happen, to answer your question. But my wife is actually from outside of Chicago. My wife, Claudia, grew up outside a small town in Joliet, Illinois. But I have a lot of friends of friends of friends who know him now. See,
really?
That's kind of the small world thing that happens here in the United States, and certainly among Catholic circles, even though there's over a billion Catholics worldwide. Our bishop, who is a very good friend of ours, who's about to be the Archbishop of Kansas City, Kansas, was actually in the Vatican and in Rome for the retreat when all this was happening. And so he ended up doing a lot of interviews. He actually knew Cardinal Prevost very well, and so now the Pope Leo the 14th. So to answer your question, I'm going to figure that out somehow.
Do you want it to be here on your turf, or would you prefer to go to the Vatican?
The Vatican's a beautiful place.
Okay.
I've been to the Vatican. I mean, we'd be welcome. I would love to have him as a guest in Missouri, to answer your question.
Michael, this is an interesting guy. When it comes to his faith, he doesn't hide it. In fact, the decor in his office, he's got a couple of Bibles, he's got a portrait of the Virgin Mary, he has a couple of crucifixes, and he has posted on X his fervent support and excitement about Pope Leo. I thought it interesting. He told me he is only the second Catholic Republican governor in the state's history.
Well, this is really exciting for people of faith. With God out of the schools and God out of many sectors of society, you're seeing on the streets today basically what it's like without morality, what it's like without God. And so America has never, ever, in my opinion, needed faith in the public square more desperately than it does now. And to have somebody at the helm of a state or nation that is a person of faith, it's huge.
And we talked about school choice, of course. A huge promise of Governor Kehoe's was to reform education in the state, and he hit the ground running. We talked a little about it. One of the things you came here pledging to do, I know, and I've read that you've walked the halls getting it done, more funding for school choice.
Yes.
And we're getting closer and closer, I suspect, I don't want to put words in your mouth, to maybe getting eventually down the road universal school choice. But we start with a $50 million package, which is a great start.
It was in our State of the State speech. It was very important to us. The House leadership kept that suggestion in, and when they sent it to the Senate, Senate did not feel maybe the same level of commitment to that funding, which is fine. That's the way the process works. But it goes to conference, and I'm thankful that the House leadership and senators who also felt that way joined with House leadership to eventually say that's an appropriate investment. And we're really glad our ESA program received that funding and that nod from the legislature to really give parents a choice to make sure that their child is not educated in a district that is not providing the appropriate education just because of the zip code they were born in. And we believe this is a major step in education reform for the state of Missouri. We're very excited about it.
You created a school funding modernization board. Can you
Right.
talk about that? And what that
Sure.
means?
Well, the funding foundation formula is what they call it, that funds public schools. And I'm a fan of public education, so this should never be taken that I'm not a fan of public education. But I'm a business guy, and so I think what the money we invest in, anything we should do, should produce results. And the foundation formula is almost 21 years old, and lots of things have changed in education, right? We saw that happen through COVID, we've seen it through virtual education, we've seen it through homeschooling, we've seen it through lots of changes. It's time for that to be updated. We cannot be in an environment where the answer to every time a school has problems with the performance objectives, the answer cannot be, well, we just need more money. That's not the answer. We need better outcomes. We need better performance. And certainly that task force will be, and not easy, but for the first time in 21 years, they're going to rewrite that formula to make sure that the schools that are not performing right have the incentives to do so, and the ones that are performing at a high level are rewarded.
You have shaken up, in fact, the entire Board of Education in the state of Missouri, as I understand it. You've appointed several new folks, let some other folks go that have been there for quite a while. I mean, this is something that obviously matters to you because you're shaking up the status quo.
Well, you know, the Board of Education, and I appreciate the people who have served for so long. I don't want to say we let them go. There were several people on there that served for 8, 10, 12 years, and thank you for your service. Those are volunteers. They get paid nothing, and that's a tough job. But I said at my State of the State, we are going to put people on our state school board that shares our vision of education reform, our vision of men and women that graduate from high school that are prepared to go to that next step. That might be the workforce, that might be career and technical, that might be a four-year university, and have the tools to succeed in life and in our state. And so we have put several new school board members on. I'm really excited about those new appointees. I am a huge fan of Carla Essinger, who is our commissioner, and I think she'll do a really good job of taking advantage of kind of this fresh and new look about how education needs to look in the state of Missouri.
U.S. News and World Report, I'm sure you read it this year, says Missouri is 33rd in education. I assume this is why you feel you got to address these things. I mean, you're new here, so in this role. So I assume that's why you're making these aggressive pushes. What about things like DESE, the Department of Secondary, that is...
Elementary and secondary education.
Thank you.
It takes me up forever to get acronyms.
Thank you, DESE.
Yeah.
I should have stuck with DESE. But anyway, you're I'm sure working closely with them and holding them accountable for these reforms as well.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to. I mean, the results you mentioned, the U.S. News and World Report, there's several different factors out there to show us we're not at the rock bottom, but we're certainly not at the top. And Missouri needs to be at the top. We're the show me state, and we certainly can do better. And our goal is to get those numbers up dramatically in a very quick period of time. I tell people all the time, our cabinet, which is your cabinet, it's Missouri's cabinet, that are the 17 men and women who help lead our different divisions. We're going to work at business speed, not bureaucrat speed, because those are two different speeds.
Josh Mann, that is a distinctly Trumpian sound to Governor Kehoe. So the agenda is there. The legislatures will, maybe not quite yet, but this conversation, we went on for a while, and you can check it out on YouTube. I hope that you will. But Josh, what's your read on this governor and the way he's handling education?
Yeah, I mean, besides the faith as a compass approach to governing, which is so refreshing, he is taking a business approach. He was a businessman, and you're right. It is a lot like what we're seeing in the White House. And I loved what he said about business speed, not bureaucrat speed. And so he doesn't want to wait forever, especially education. It's such a huge part of society and government, and huge amounts of money are spent on it. But he is keen on looking at how the money's being spent, and he wants outcomes, not just, oh, there's a problem, let's throw money at it, but let's get better outcomes. And I think with that kind of approach, which you see in business, Missouri's well on its way to the education reform it needs.
Yeah, I'd ask you, Michael, quickly, do you think we're going to get to universal school choice in Missouri? Do you think it's coming?
I think it has to. It's freedom. And, you know, we're looking at a president of the United States who wants school choice scholarships in this big, beautiful bill. And we may talk a little bit about that later. But to me, that's an emancipation proclamation for the civil rights cause of our era, which is education.
A lot of us are Chiefs and Royals fans around here. The governor and I talked about one is a huge battle here in the Midwest. Kansas, Missouri, who's going to get the Chiefs and the Royals? Because those stadium leases are up, and they're looking for new stadiums, the both of them. So I asked Governor Kehoe to comment on it. We had a conversation when you were running. At the time, of course, in the Kansas City metro area, all eyes have been, and for some time now, have been on the stadiums. What's going to happen with the Kansas City Chiefs and the Kansas City Royals? At the time, I think you said it's sticky because if you start talking about funding Kansas City stadiums, certainly St. Louis is going to chirp and want their share, understandably. Here we are now. Kansas is making a real play for these teams. Sure. I understand it's kind of hit maybe some speed bumps in the Senate. Maybe I know you haven't said so formally, but I read maybe we're talking about a special session to get this done. Where do things stand? And do you think ultimately Missouri can compete with Kansas to keep up?
Yeah, I've said all along that, taking dump truck loads of cash and giving it to team owners or for stadiums or something is not what Missourians want us to do. But they do want us to look at these opportunities like an economic development project. And I'm sure I said this to you when I interviewed, is that it's no different than a widget manufacturer. If they want to move to another state and they have a bunch of jobs, we want to keep them here. Our team, along with the help of a lot of people over the last several weeks, including legislative leaders from both the House and Senate, from all parts of the state, by the way, work through a package that's applicable for any large major league team that wants to invest literally billions of dollars in building a stadium, whether it's the St. Louis Cardinals, the Kansas City Royals, or the Kansas City Chiefs. And so we came up with an economic development tool that essentially allows them to keep the tax dollars that they collect and that they've earned from their investment to use as bond proceeds to build a new stadium with. And then we keep everything that comes in net new, the state of Missouri. So Missourians get to keep that. We think that's a good tool, not to get too much in the weeds. We always said all along, because the total investment from both teams in their facilities could near $3 billion. And by the way, those would be publicly owned facilities with private dollars invested into them, that it would likely require a special session. We did that for Boeing, we did that for Ford, we did that for GM, and all governors of different parties have done special sessions when it's come to a major economic development package. So that's where we're faced now. We're taking a strong look at that. We did introduce it during session, got a very strong vote in the House, so we felt really good about that. So we'll look at what the legislature looks like in the next 2 or 3 weeks, maybe month, and try to figure out if there's a right path and opportunity to put that question before both bodies.
Have the ownership groups at the stadiums of the teams, have they expressed an interest in wanting to stay in Missouri, or are they playing maybe both sides of the fence a little bit?
They're business people, so if I were them, I'd leverage every offer I got from any other state to get the best deal I could. That's why they're good business people, and I understand that. I can tell you that I've had intimate conversations with the owners and the management group of both of those teams, and I would tell you they want to stay in Missouri. But again, they have shareholders or family members in this case that are looking at this from a business standpoint, and I don't think we can say, gee, Missouri's just a nice place, we'd like you to stay, when a potential other state is offering sometimes billions of dollars in incentives. We're going to have to do something within our economic toolbox area that we've adapted for this particular conversation to show them we'd like them to stay, but it has to be a good return on investment from Missouri taxpayers.
All right, Valerie, you're a Chiefs fan. How do you feel about the likelihood of Kansas taking the Chiefs away?
Like Governor Kehoe is talking, it's going to be billions of dollars in play from both sides of the line. Now, I do agree with him that I think both teams would prefer to stay in Missouri, but when it does come down to it, they are business people, so we are talking dollar signs. Who is going to be able to present the best offer? I think that if Missouri can get their offer similar to where Kansas is and promise some different benefits, I think that they're probably going to stay. We have no idea what that's going to look like, but I couldn't imagine them moving to the Kansas side. I think that most Chiefs fans probably feel the same way, whether you live on the Kansas or the Missouri side, since Kansas City is just so centralized to where the stadiums are right now. But this is an exciting talk. I'm excited for new development and what it's going to do for the economy when they do develop, if they do build new in Missouri or if they build new in Kansas. We've got our eyes on this, and we're really excited to see where it goes.
And Michael, quickly, if you're a betting man, what do you think these teams do?
Well, I think the Royals are definitely going to look to the Kansas side, and the Chiefs may if Missouri doesn't come up with some kind of package. I remember just a few years ago we were talking about not having a border war and not taking companies from one state side of the state line to the other, but this is a border war, and it's kind of nuclear.
Panel, thanks a lot. And thanks to Governor Kehoe for all of his time. That full half-hour interview available at the Lion Week in Review YouTube site. I hope you'll check it out. Watch all of it. It's a good one. And when we get back, we'll wrap up with the panel, some of their favorite stories of the week, and closing thoughts as the Lion Week in Review returns. Welcome back to the Lion Week in Review. As we wrap up, we always like to talk to the panel about their favorite stories of the week, stories they think you ought to pay particular attention to at readlion.com. Valerie, we start with you. What do you like this week?
I'm going to turn back to our conversation that we had with the Lion and Linda McMahon in the education department. You know, this has been something that has been extremely controversial, but I want to turn heads to the fact that since the Department of Education has been formed, it has been declining. We have the numbers, we have the data. We also know now that education is not a one-size-fits-all, and different types of educations, different models of educations work better for different kids. That's important. And so this is really important what she is saying and really getting into the nitty-gritty of this, because I just don't understand why it's a controversial issue. Like, don't we want the best for kids? I think one of the biggest lies that I've seen from the left is that it's for some but not for all. But that's not true. The heart behind this is that every student in America, no matter your race, your if you have a disability, no matter what, is to have the best educational outcomes for everyone. And that is why we're doing what we're doing.
Josh Mann, your favorite story this week?
Well, can district judges issue nationwide rulings that even restrict the actions of the president, who is elected by the American people? That's one of the major questions right now for the Trump administration. And the Supreme Court has commented on this in the birthright citizenship case this week. Justice Alito, said Article 3 judges are vulnerable to an occupational disease, which is the disease of thinking, I am bright and can do whatever I want. And so this is definitely something to keep our eye on, and you can read all about it at The Lion.
And Michael, your favorite this week?
Well, I have a couple. We talked earlier about the folks belatedly in California standing up against unfairness in women's and girls' sports with transgender athletes. Early on, even on the cusp of her activism, I interviewed Riley Gaines, and she told me the story about during COVID, the lockdown. They weren't able to do anything, so she would don a wetsuit and jump in the family pond and train, while this transgender athlete was actually off of training and transitioning, and they still tied. And so that kind of illustrates the fact that males have an advantage. The other thing is UCLA medical school is facing a lawsuit over racist hiring practices, and Christopher Rufo has gotten indications from Harvard documents that, and I'll just quote, internal documents from Harvard revealing that the university deliberately penalizes white men in hiring and would virtually eliminate supposed oppressor groups from certain occupations. A lot of movement in that. Christopher Rufo did a great job in a book about how Marxism and anti-white racism had burrowed into academia since the 60s. It's going to be tough to dislodge.
Panel, great stuff. That's going to do it for this week's edition of the Lion Week in Review. Keep up to date on all the latest news each and every day at readlion.com. And if you missed any of today's show, you can always catch it on YouTube, as well as that full conversation with Governor Kehoe. For all of us here at the Lion, thanks a lot for downloading this show, and we'll see you again next time.